We just returned from a week in Germany, and it was really interesting to be there in Berlin and Munich, and even down in Salzburg, Austria, and near Hitler's Eagle's Nest down there, to be around just ground zero of where the Nazi regime took hold and dominated for 12 years. And it was also interesting just to learn more about the church and how the Jesus followers of Germany responded to that. Um, as they got started, the Nazis started to try to consolidate the Protestant church and wanted them basically to fall under the National Socialist Party and be a government essentially controlled church. And so most of the churches fell in line with that either out of agreement or out of fear. But there was a smaller group of churches which eventually became known as the Confessing Church, and they weren't outwardly going against Hitler and the Nazis. They didn't probably even at that point in the early 30s know what all was going on, but they weren't okay with the church being under the state, and they weren't okay with when eventually the Aryan paragraph came out, basically saying how Aryans were superior and the Jews couldn't be in the churches, they couldn't be people that were married to Jews couldn't be in the churches, and just all the things that it said about Jews just in Germany. And so these churches they protested that, and things started to escalate, and around 700 or so pastors of the Confessing Church were arrested. Later, several were killed or jailed. Some of the more famous ones, Karl Barth, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, were working against this. And the church itself never fully, as an organization or as a group, fought the Nazis on every level, but they protested it and stayed out of it. And then individuals in that, or individual groups in it, really fought to even try to take down Hitler. Why do I tell you all this? Well, it was fascinating to see that there, and then think about what does the church here in the United States look like right now. And I feel like it in many ways, many churches, the Protestant churches here, have been moving closer and closer to a political stance or even a political party and putting country before God. And that many so-called Christians are doing the same. And I think that's a dangerous thing to do, as they saw in Nazi Germany. And now we're not at the same place where the United States government is asking the church to fall under the state, but there's enough signs out there that people are using the church for their political gain. And I think this is just a warning to us for me to check on my church. I feel good about the leadership of our church and that they're not moving that direction. I can't speak for every member of the church, but there's a lot of churches involved with the national Christian national sort of movement, and it makes me a little nervous. It's a little scary as to kind of the rhetoric you hear coming out of them, and some of the things that we're seeing in Germany back in the 1930s and 40s. And so, just a heads up and a warning to, if you're a Jesus follower or a Christian, to check is your church following what Jesus said, following biblical principles, and is that what your church stands for? Or are you really worshiping someone other than Jesus? Are you worshiping someone that promises you things here on earth versus things in heaven? And are you aligning yourself to get your political agendas pushed through and using the church to do that? So I hope that's not the case, but it worries me a little bit about where I see the general church in America going. Live with grace, friends.